If you're filing a marriage visa application, a single mistake can cause your application to get delayed or denied, and you obviously don't want that to happen. My name is Rahim Dhanani. I'm a U.S. immigration attorney. I've been practicing U.S. immigration law for more than 25 years. Today, I'm going to go through some common mistakes that people make when filing a marriage visa application and how to correct those issues. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, do you have incomplete or inaccurate forms? Did you include all of the forms that are needed for the marriage application? There are several forms that go in the application. If you don't include them all, then you could potentially cause your case to get denied or delayed. And then also, once you have those documents, did you fill out all of the information completely? If you, again, don't put in all of the information that's needed for those applications, then again, the application could get just sent back to you, which will cause delays, or you could end up getting denied. I've also seen it where, for example, people file the immigrant petition form with the USCIS when their spouse or other relative is here in the US, and they think that that's all that they have to do, when in reality there's other forms that need to get filed with that application. And because they only filed one part of the application, they get an approval for that application, only to realize that, oh, now I have to file a bunch of additional forms with this application so that my relative can remain in the US and get their permanent resident card. And if they would have just filed everything together at the beginning, then what they would have had is an application that got approved all at the same time, and their relative would have had their green card a lot sooner. So it's a pretty big issue. Just make sure that you get all of those applications and file them at the same time, and that you file them accurately. Another issue is, do you have supporting documents in the application? Some basic ones are things like your marriage certificate on the marriage case and birth certificates. And if the person who is sponsoring the immigrant is a naturalized citizen, then you'd want to include the naturalization certificate. So you want to make sure that you have some of those basic documents that are needed for the application to get approved. Another issue is, a lot of times people put inconsistent information. They may have, for example, on their addresses that they've lived at for the past several years, they may have listed one address as 123 and incorrectly listed it as 128 on another form in the packet, or maybe they put that they lived in that address from January to December, but then on another form they put, I lived there from January to July. And so it creates inconsistencies and also raises questions about your application. Another issue is if you don't disclose your previous immigration issues if the forms ask for it. So if the form asks, have you ever violated your status, and the immigrant has fallen out of status, then potentially you may need to answer that question yes, depending on what the circumstances are. Also, if the immigrant has ever been arrested or detained and they've been convicted of a crime, the application forms will ask that information. And if you don't disclose it, then you would cause a lot of delays and potentially get denied if you don't address the issue. And you may need to end up filing for various waivers. And usually the Immigration Service will give you like 90 days to respond to a request for evidence. And that may not be enough time to gather all of the documents regarding the conviction and have it addressed. So then that application would get denied, and then potentially the immigrant would get put into deportation proceedings. So you really want to make sure you address that on the front end before you apply. Another common thing that people do is they don't include evidence of the marriage, or when they get to the interview, they don't have a lot of evidence of the marriage. So things like joint bank accounts, joint insurance, documents that have both of you listed with the same insurance, your driver's licenses have the same address, joint credit cards, those types of things that a normal couple would have if they're married and living together. And if you don't include evidence of that in the application, then that would also potentially cause a denial, or at least cause some delay, because the Immigration Service may want to see those documents before they approve your application. Another issue is the financial support. The person who's sponsoring the immigrant needs to show that they make 125% above the poverty level for their particular household size. So if they don't meet 125% above that level, then they need to maybe include assets that they have as part of their application for the affidavit of support to show that they, even though they don't meet the income requirements, they have enough assets to cover the 125%. Another thing that they may do is they may get a joint sponsor who is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and they could have that joint sponsor include the application for affidavit of support in their marriage application, and then that may solve the issue. But you need to address that when you are getting ready to file. Again, if the Immigration Service issues a request for evidence, they'll give you 90 days, and you may not have enough time in that 90 days to take care of the issue. And then finally, another thing that people will do is they file the application and then they have a marriage interview, and the interview could be several months or more than a year away after you file the application. And you may not remember what you put in the application just because it's been several months or more than a year. And you don't want to go to the immigration office and just have inconsistent answers from what you put on the form. So it's a good idea to, both for the U.S. citizen or permanent resident who's sponsoring and the immigrant, to just review the application and the information that was put on those forms so that they are providing consistent information at the interview. And that's not to say that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that people forget what they put on applications over a period of months or years, and it's just refreshing your memory. So you just want to make sure your answers are consistent. If you figure out that something that you put in the application is not correct, then at the interview, that would be your opportunity to go ahead and make that correction while you're at the interview. And usually it's not that big a deal. The officers understand that maybe you misunderstood something and you just wanted to clarify with the officer, and that's fine too. Those are some basic issues that people have when they file their marriage applications, and they're fairly easy to avoid. Just be a little bit proactive when you're filing the application. And then again, when you get around to the interview, just make sure you review everything, and you should be in a lot better shape than if you didn't do those things on the front end. Hope that's helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.